I realized what had happened in Spain, and I'm like, you know what? Somebody needs to start the world's safest bank. And that's a bank that would have no leverage, no rehypothecation. If you deposited money, it would put it straight with treasuries, with the Federal Reserve. So I started looking at this system because I knew a lot of family offices and institutions needed this because everyone was terrified of the banking system, and rightly so. And I went around the world trying to set this up, and we looked at a trust bank in Texas, a trust bank in Singapore, we looked at something in Switzerland. It's hard work to set up a bank. And then we had a global macro investor, my research business, roundtable in Spain. And one of my members, subscribers, who's an old friend, Emil Woods, was there. And he said, another ex-Goldman guy, another ex-hedge fund guy, he's like, you thought about Bitcoin? And I had looked at it. This was 2013, early 2013. Or maybe it was 2012, not sure. So I started doing more work into it and realized that Bitcoin could be an answer to a lot of this. This whole blockchain technology means that things like rehypothecation and those reuse of assets could be recorded, so we know who owns what, which is a big problem in the financial system. Maybe we didn't need banks. Maybe we didn't need to trust governments with what they do to the value of money. So I'm like, okay, this is really interesting. So I kind of started putting some thoughts around it and wrote an article for Global Macro Investor, which was the first kind of basis of a stock to flow model. I said, well, if it is digital gold, because that's what it was being called at the time, then let's look at the above ground supply of gold out of the total known amount of gold, and then back that into the same numbers we know for Bitcoin. And I said, with gold at 1,300, Bitcoin's worth about $1 million. And that Bitcoin at the time was 200.
Wow.
So people were like, this guy's an idiot, but it also got circulated around Silicon Valley very fast. People were like, oh my God, there's a macro framework for this thing. So I think I was probably the first person to build a macro framework. And I invested, and it went up 100% in a month. So I sold it and was like, well, okay,
you sold
that's
all
interesting. Because you're not used to assets going up 100% in a month.
You sold all of it?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I made 100%. That's great. And then I followed the market, and then I probably rebought back in about 2015. And then I eventually sold out for 10 times my money, way too early, because I would have made 100 times my money if I'd held on a bit longer, because I got very confused about what was going on with the forks when people were trying to create different versions of Bitcoin. I'm like, I don't understand this. And at the time, nobody did. Nobody knew whether it was going to survive or not. And I'm like, well, I don't really understand. So I will take my money off the table. And I was happy with that. And then Bitcoin shot up. And then I spoke at the big consensus, I think it was the consensus event or the CoinDesk event, whatever, it was the biggest crypto event. And I got up on stage in mid-December, and I had to give the Bitcoin bear speech, even though I'd been a bull. And I think I nailed the top within 2 days at that event, even though I'd sold out my Bitcoin a lot earlier than that. People were like angry with me on stage. Like, this is stupid, it's ridiculous. And then, Bitcoin then suffered a tremendous bear market. And then I bought in again in 2019.